Hi everyone. I'm gonna throw a platter. Thought this would be a fun one. I haven't thrown one in a while. You know, this is the time of this recording. It's September 26th, I think, 2020. So this is 6 months after the COVID pandemic has hit, and things are getting into a good schedule for me in the studio finally. So last time I threw a platter was probably about 8 months ago. So we'll see how I do. So I've tried, slap centering down into a relatively centered clay slab for throwing these, and I've just found that throwing them on the wheel works well for me, and 12 pounds is a nice size to work with. One reason is I know I can get 2 out of a bag of clay. The other is like the law of diminishing returns. If I throw a 15-pound platter with this size bat, it's not too big, or it's not noticeably larger than if I throw 12 to 12.5 pound platter, right? Same thing goes with the 10 pound. 10 pound is a little too small. So I've just found 12.5 pounds works really well. These bats are interesting. They are grooved in a way that you get this little wobble on the bottom, these plastic bats. It's actually, I don't know why I haven't flipped it over yet. So this is the texture side, and even if you run your sponge along it, can you see that little speed wobble? That's not from my hand being shaky. It's from the grooves and the direction that are caused by the bat itself. So I'm always going to have this little wobble at the bottom, right? You can see that, which is kind of maddening, but that's all right. I'm not really going to need that bottom for too much. I don't know if you can see, but I really like to lean in to my hand and use that as a tool. It's another thing of, taking care of my joints and working with a large enough amount of clay. It's rough on your joints, especially if you're throwing, right? I'll get one more cone wedge with this just to make sure everything is nice and centered on the inside. That's the big thing with these platters. Is making sure that things are centered enough. And I'll begin compressing. See, there's that wobble, right? So just go with it. Once I open and get away from that space, I won't have much of a wobble. And then when you trim your foot or trim the back side, it's going to go away. So pressing down in the center. Compressing on the side. Going back again. The center always has a little bit more of a divot than the outside when I compress in. It kind of sets up the platter in a really nice way. And it's almost a form of opening, right? I'm not going to open up too much more. I'm just kind of getting this set up for everything, right? So again, a trick that I like doing in measuring the width of the clay in finger widths from the bat to the height of the clay. I know this is going to be a good height for me to work with. So in opening from the center out, I'll start there. I fought the weight of clay for a really long time. And even with these platters, they're really not that heavy, but making really thin feather light stuff and putting it in the wood kiln, usually there's a pretty high frequency rate in having warped work, especially with plates. So I started my open. And I'm just adjusting and going back. I'm leaving the base kind of thick because I want to trim a foot that can hang on a wall. So if my base is too thin, then, well, I won't have that nice foot to trim in to hang on a wall. So again, just go with the flow on this movement, right? Not really worried about this. I kind of throw asymmetrical plates anyway, so it's one more step further along. One thing I always try to be careful with is as I open, my hand position changes a little bit, so I can't really dig into the clay quite as well here, but I really can here as I move closer to the edge. So I'm noticing that this is a little bit less, this is more deep in the center right here, which is okay. It's still thick enough on the bottom, it's not going to affect things too much. I'm recentering my clay wall and then removing the slip. So as you can see, I don't have a splash pan. I'm just using the slip and the amount of water that I need so I'm not creating a mess. So in beginning this, I'm just going to press in on the outside just to lift the edge up a little bit, right? That kind of frames everything in nicely. And now I'll smooth out the inside. So using the flat edge of this Mud Tools rib, pressing down in. It smooths things out really nicely, as you can see, and I'm working on flattening out this line right here. So not only is it removing the slip, it's compressing that base together, making the clay strong. And I'll only do that a couple times. The thing with ribs is they pull out water, and as soon as the surface of your clay starts to get dry, you'll start getting these chatter marks, which I don't mind typically, but sometimes the chatter lines on the inside of these platters is a little too much. So the inside of the platter will be glazed with a Chino slip that I got from Simon Levin, and the color variation on the inside with the flashing of the flames and the wood ash that collects is just a little too much going on. So this is like a blank slate. That's the canvas, and then the rim that I'm gonna throw here is gonna be its frame. Right? So with this, I like using the yellow Mud Tools rib. It's a real nice edge. It's stiff. soft enough to remove that clay slip. And again, it's all about the setup. So removing the slip. Wetting down the surface. Getting ready for my shaping. Committing to that shape. So I'll just begin pressing down, and what's happening is that with this curved edge I'm getting a roll that's moving from the center out on both sides, so I'm getting a nice clay roll here that's going to shape the inside of the plate and the outside as well. And I want to make sure not to go too far. So if I go too far, then this flattens out onto that nice surface that I just created. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but you take my word for it, I'm getting these little chatter lines from this rib, and in the past I would use that as a way to make a asymmetrical rim. It becomes really floral and things like that. It's also really hard on my joints, so I've stopped doing that, at least for now, until I can figure out a way that isn't quite as disruptive on my joints. And instead I've just gone to using my wire tool and cutting an asymmetrical rim. So this is set up really nicely, and I'll let this go slowly. The slower that I let it go, I'll be able to have more of a long flowing asymmetrical rim with more points. If I go faster, it'll happen a lot more quickly, and I'll get less of an asymmetrical rim. So I want some nice smooth flowing lines, and as always, this is one of those steps that you just have to commit to, and dump out all the cookies in the cookie jar in your head and just let it commence, right? So here we go. Great. So I'm looking at this. I've got some nice lines. The clay is really kind of thick. Like I said, it's been a while since I've thrown one of these before. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and see if I can't stretch it out a little bit. So using my throwing rib, I can stretch the clay out just a little bit more. And when I do this, I want to wet my rib and wet the surface so I'm not skipping too much. I think that might be it. I'll do one more pass. Right, so I threw out that clay wall just a little bit. If I were to carve this again, I would get a little bit more of a different line. Let's see if we can get just a little bit of some chatter lines here. There we go. So it gives a little bit of, you know, a nice flowing wave that will be highlighted during a wood fire. So to finish this, I want to raise this up just a little bit because this rim has a good chance during a firing of warping downward. So the trick is if you put your finger down here at the base and press, it will raise the rim up. You know, physics. And then smoothing out the rim just a little bit. And as you can see from the pressure of my left hand below and my right hand holding the rib, I create this nice little split edge, which will collect a lot of nice ash droplets and things. So there you guys have it. 12.5 pound platter. This is a 20-inch bat, I think, width-wise, so probably about 14 inches wide, maybe. So there you go. We'll see you again soon.